Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show. I'm Michael.
And I'm Patty.
Patty, welcome aboard to another episode of our podcast. I could think back just a few weeks ago when we thought we were actually going to run out of subjects for the podcast, and lo and behold, hasn't it just been entertainment central in the last couple of weeks with never-ending stories and comedic events that make real estate so fun, enjoyable, and comedic in so many ways.
Yeah, and there's no shortage, and we really were concerned that, have we provided all the information and education that we possibly could? But on a daily, weekly basis, there always seems to be new situations that arise which allow for more, again, content, but education opportunities.
And the big challenge I find, whether it's YouTube or it's Instagram or a podcast, is it's sort of like talking to yourself. You don't get a lot of feedback, and it doesn't seem to matter how many times people putting on a podcast ask for feedback. They just don't get any. And it's just like asking people to follow, subscribe, give a thumbs up, whatever you do with a podcast, get feedback, a star rating. Even the big podcasts that have hundreds of thousands of listeners might have 50 people giving feedback, which is really bad. I actually, every time I watch a YouTube video, I purposely give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. A nasty one.
No, you don't.
No, I leave a good one.
Sometimes on mine, you've left some odd comments, but I know that's more for your entertainment than anything. But I do agree along with you. It is, good practice to allow the person who's taking the time, putting together the content, the information, the entertainment sometimes, to just let them know that, hey, we acknowledge and like what you're doing. Keep up the good work. So I know you are definitely a proponent. The other option, too, that more businesses I find today are getting more involved with and requesting is Google reviews. So that's somewhere else that you could always be looking at. Again, if you're at a good restaurant and you've had a really good experience, make sure you leave them some feedback and even post a picture or two.
Because essentially what you're doing is you're feeding into the algorithms of these social media services, and you're telling them, hey, I'm listening, I'm interested, let's hear some more. So let's hear some more. One of the topics that I had, which was topic number 3, actually plays into a couple of stories you told me this morning over breakfast, which basically comes down to the same story and over and over and over again, which is to communicate properly with your buyers and sellers. Maybe you can explain more. Sorry, I was just paying attention to a taxi driver that was just about to drive into the front of the truck here.
Yes. You want to make sure that you are speaking accurately and relaying on information and feedback that your client is saying, and not what you as a real estate professional feels that you should or shouldn't be doing. One of the situations that I had shared with you this morning, Michael, was we have had a situation where I guess some furniture items were going to be, after all the conditions have been removed and the sale was a firm deal, because we don't like to complicate our contract agreements with furniture items, because the next issue becomes, when do you pay for the furniture items? Do you pay for them up front, or do you pay for them at closing? Do you involve lawyers? It just gets to be a complicated situation. So we do try our best to keep our contracts as clean, as simple as possible. In this particular one, the agent had all the conditions representing the buyer all removed, and then asked the listing agent, would your client be interested in perhaps selling any of the furniture content or items? The listing agent immediately said, no, we're not going there. We're not interested. That's not going to happen. Only to have these particular buyers respond to some ads on Marketplace, showed up at the property that they were looking to buy, and be told that we wanted to see if you wanted any items, and they were questioning the realtors involved. And so you want to make sure these people, it's a small world, and PEI is even smaller, that you are accurately conveying what your seller's wishes are and not speaking on their behalf without their consent and permission. So that was one of the situations. Another situation that I shared with you this morning, Michael, was where there was an agent who was making the deal a little bit difficult, only to have, and this was the listing agent, based on information and requests that the buyers had and were asking through their buyer's agent. The deal was getting very complicated. It was becoming a bit more of a traumatic situation for both the buyer and the seller. They thought it was honestly the other party, only to have a third agent involved from another province reach out to the buyer's agent to say, hey, what's going on? My clients who are relocating here are saying that, this is getting to be a bit of a stressful situation and these are the demands, only to find out it was the listing agent's information. And they were not fairly representing or conveying what the seller's wishes were. Don't overcomplicate a deal. Make sure if you're a buyer or seller that you tell your agent, this is our wishes. And hopefully that is what's conveyed. I will say majority of agents are really, really good. Unfortunately, I have been privileged to these two stories. They're not involving any of my clients. But in the last, say month and a half, 2 months, and I just don't think it's acceptable.
Well, there's a lot to unwrap there, and one of the things in your initial story is the agent was basically saying he didn't want to get into furniture, which is fine. I agree with that. I have no problem looking at writing receiving offers that include fridge, stove, microwave, washer, dryer. But sometimes, and I think you'll have to agree with this, and if you don't, let me know, you will have these purchasers that will say, well, I'm interested in the red couch and I'm interested in the blue seat and there's a couple of lights upstairs that I like. And then you get into, well, where are these lights? What room are they in? Is this the light? Is that the light? Is this the red couch? There's 4 red couches. No, it's the brown one. No, the brown one's not red. So it turns into this career where you're dealing on furniture. And that's why a lot of the agents, and with all due respect to the agent you referred to, was basically trying to say, I'm not in the furniture business, I'm in the home business. But what that agent did is he took it a step further and he said that the vendors, the owner of the house, weren't interested in selling the furniture, which was a misstatement. It was incorrect. And what he should have said, because he did get this information from the home sellers, is said, let's get this deal firmed up, because from the agents or the broker standpoint, they don't want the purchasers talking to the sellers or the vendors for various reasons, and that's why they hire us as middle people to handle the transaction. But the agents don't want to get into furniture. Now, after the deal is done, all the conditions are removed, the deposit is locked in. I see no reason why. I mean, it wouldn't be my preference, but I see no reason why, if the purchasers are adamant and the sellers are adamant about buying and selling furniture, fixtures, contents of the garage, generator, bicycles, vehicles, they can negotiate this on their own, and they can be responsible for that payment through their lawyer at point of conveyance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but not that I 100% agree with you. I do feel that as realtors involved, I would prefer not to have the buyer and seller, because if there's a personality conflict, the deal can start to go sideways. So
that's why I said reluctantly. I don't want the purchasers talking to the vendor, but if the purchaser insists and the vendor insists on communicating in regards to things that they want to get rid of with the sale, what are you going to say? No?
No, absolutely.
I'm not letting you guys talk.
I
have to get paid first.
I would like to be the one in control of that. And, I don't mind if there's some items involved that, if I'm representing a buyer, would like a few of the pieces and all conditions have been removed and it's all clean. And I already said that.
What's your limit? Are we talking 5 pieces or 150?
I've done both.
I know you have. You did one there. It must have been 200 or 300 items. And then just as a joke, you asked the listing agent for a picture of 200-300 items, and he said he was going to do that on the weekend for her.
And I did get a completely detailed list many years ago of pages and pages. The best practice would be what is the shorter list, what you're going to leave or, what you're going to take. This one, I think the shorter list would have been what they were going to take, but they decided to provide a list of all the items that they were in agreement to including. I will just say, as realtors, yes, it's not what we typically sign up to do, but then in a way we do. We're representing them. This is a big purchase. It's a big sale. And whatever we can do to make this as smooth as possible, and perhaps even make it easier for the seller not to have to move so much furniture, or posting on Kijiji or Marketplace or some third-party platform to try selling and dealing with people in and out of their home. If it would make everybody happier, why not?
So you heard it here first. Patty's in the furniture business, that if you need to sell anything, whether it's one item or 1,000, she will handle it all for you. So the point of this was to illustrate that communication needs to be 100%. The agent, the listing agent, or the purchaser's agent cannot make statements that weren't made by the purchaser or the seller, and hopefully backed up by some form of written communication in the form of a text or an email. Would you agree with that first point?
I would agree.
Second point is, if you do decide to get into the furniture business as an agent, wonderful. Just make sure things are very well documented as far as what they are, where they're located. And if you want to take it to the extreme, and I have done this with vehicles and lawnmowers, take pictures of the items that you're selling so there's no confusion. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree.
Great. We're going to move on to point number 3, which is actually one of my first points on our sheet, but we sort of improv the intro. Here's a question. An offer comes in. You're representing the purchaser. I'm representing the seller. And you tell me as the purchaser's agent that here's an offer, and I look at the offer, I present it to my vendors, and my vendors are completely thrown by the offer, offended. They get very emotional, start screaming and shouting, and they tie a rock to the offer and throw it out through their window and say, we're not responding to this. And then I get a message from you that says, well, you have to respond to it. Do I have to respond to it? Does my vendor have to respond to it?
There should be a response that...
The response was the rock.
Yes, but were the buyer agent and buyer privileged to being able to witness that?
What the point of contention is the purchaser's agent says, according to they're all Philadelphia lawyers, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to find some clause in the realtor code, the bylaws, the provincial laws, and they're going to misconstrue it. And they'll say, well, according to the bylaw, it says you have to, in writing, reject this offer. There's a yeah, but, as a friend of mine named Julius used to say. The yeah, but is we work, just like we said from our initial intro, for the purchasers or the sellers. We represent them just like a lawyer would represent their client. If my client says, I hate this offer, there's nothing in it I like, and I'm not going to waste another second on it, we do not have to formally go through that whole offer, initial it, sign it where it says a rejection, and send it back to that other agent. Now, with what you said, makes 100% sense. Always get everything in writing, preferably an email, secondarily a text. I prefer not a voicemail, something textual, because as you know, it doesn't matter what they say over the phone or in person. What they say tomorrow may be the opposite, or they say you misunderstood. This way, if it's in writing, at least we can send that to the other agent. But there's no legal requirement for a vendor to either sit down or digitally sign off an offer to reject, regardless of what this Philadelphia lawyer agent thinks. Because we work for them.
We work for the seller. And so what is being cited is it's within our rules and regulations that says rejected agreements of purchase and sale shall be signed and all pages of the agreement and purchase and sale initialed indicating the time and date of presentation. However, the key word there is shall. It doesn't mean they must. It's they shall or they shall not. We can't force a client. It is best practice as per our rules and regulations, yes, to have the contract agreement signed. I typically, whether it's not 100% in alignment with this, but I do get them to sign that it is rejected. I do send the offer back in its entirety with the rejection. Many times I'll get just the page from agents that has the rejected signature on it. I don't really agree along with that. I don't make a big deal about it. A rejected offer is a rejected offer. Why am I going to stress out my buyer client? However, I do feel if I receive the offer back in its entirety with the page stating that it was rejected, we don't have a deal. It's not going further. Hopefully, there's a reason and a good explanation so that I can convey that on to my buyer client. For these reasons, they've decided to reject your offer and maybe come back with a better offer. It would be best practice for the agents to have a discussion instead of just flat out rejecting a contract agreement. But that's why you're hiring a realtor. We should be trying our best. We have a buyer client who has conveyed an interest in purchasing. We have a seller client who has advertised and put a property out there on the market. So clearly they have an interest in selling. There should be a little more conversation than just a quick rejection.
Oh, I agree 100%. But in some cases, with some offers you receive, you'll see things like, I have a house to sell, and then you check the MLS and it's 40% overpriced, and I want 3 weeks for financing, which tells me their financing shaky, and they want 4 weeks for a home inspection, 5 weeks for an insurance inspection, and they're asking everything, including their kids and the dog.
Yes.
In this particular case, there's probably not a lot to work with there. My main concern here would be the financing component of things, but not all situations merit a counteroffer. Now, I know you've received some training, as have I, from people working these high-end markets in Nantucket and Cape Cod, and they're dealing $10, $20, $40 million houses. That's a little bit different. You may only have one buyer for that house, and you want to work with that buyer, whether it takes a month, 2 months, or 9 months, or 3 years to put that deal together. But when you're dealing with a commoditized market, that being the local $200,000 to $400,000 market, it's not like you're not going to find another buyer. In fact, this property's probably already sold within the last week or so that this discussion's even taken place.
Yes. No, I agree.
We're getting to the stats, and this is have you looked at the stats for June 2025?
No, because I just got back. I was away.
Welcome back to the island. Well, back here in civilization, as I've said before, you have to take these stats with a grain of salt. The reason being is when you look at the percentiles, they're based on very, very small numbers. So when I read these stats, I think, holy geez, this is the hottest market ever on planet Earth, maybe the whole galaxy. Home sales are up 51.9%. Home sales number 243 units in June 25 compared to 160 units in June 24. New listings, boy, they've gone through the roof there. 23.5% increase, 458 versus 371 from 2024. Benchmark price. Benchmark is supposed to be the typical house that people are buying on the island. The benchmark price was $378,300 in June 2025, up 5.4% from $358,900 back in June 2024, and our market as of June is balanced but tilted slightly in the favor of the sellers. I know from driving around, there's a lot of for sale signs. I think there's 2 or 3 houses just within a block of my house that went up in the last few weeks. This is the busiest time of the year, but by the same token, a few years ago, those for sale signs would go up and they'd have a sold sign on them within a few days. Now you're seeing them sit for months and months because a lot of them are just overpriced.
Yeah, there's a lot more inventory starting to stay on the market for longer days, I find. Now, longer days were just a couple extra days here, a couple extra days there as the months go on. Our market has definitely shifted. I was pulling land sales just over the last couple days and that. And land sales, well, land inventory as a whole, we have over 1,200 pieces of land available on PEI from tip to tip. That's a lot of inventory. We went down to approximately just under 600 back in 2022 when we actually had an active land market. And this year so far, and as of the end of June, just pulling the 6 months, we've sold 271 pieces of land when under contract in the first 6 months. The highest we sold was 700, I believe it was 752 in 2022 being our highest land sale year.
Did you break that down by region and area?
No, I didn't get into that. We do that separate on our other stats. I just wanted to know the island as a whole because I have many seller clients for land saying, what's the land market doing? Is there any action? It doesn't seem like we have any activity going on. What do we need to do? And I'm going to ask this question to you, Michael. If the land sales seems to be lower, just because there's not as many land buyers out there, do you advise your land property owners that have them advertised through you that it's price? You need to reduce the price. Or do you just say it's going to take longer days on market?
Oh, a trick question for me to step into.
Yes. Just curious.
Look at selling property as an old style scale. Remember those scales? On one side, you put some weights. On the other side, you'd put whatever you're weighing.
Yes.
And you'd have to balance it out so the little needle would say 0.
Yes.
Look at selling property as on one side of the scale, we have marketing. Okay? So we're going to go out. We're going to listen to our podcast episode on how to hire a PEI real estate agent. So you're going to get your marketing in place. So that side of your scale is perfect. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to listen to the next podcast, which is how long is it going to take my property to sell? And we're going to calculate absorption rates. We're also going to look at what has sold. We're not necessarily going to look so much at what's active or for sale to price the property. We're going to look at those as competitors later. So for the purposes of this exercise, on one side we have the perfect agent with the perfect marketing. On the other side, we have the perfect price based on the market. Now, a lot of these prices will tie into the seller's motivation. Or they'll say, I had someone contact me a few weeks ago. They bought the second most expensive building lot in the whole island. And I'm thinking, you guys way overpaid and you're never going to sell this unless you find another you. In that particular case, they're not going to see their money coming out of that property in all likelihood for a very long time if the market even gets to that point. But getting back to my scale, one side you have marketing, the other side you have the perfect price. You look at the absorption rates, that's going to tell you how long it's going to take to sell. From what you tell me, even though you're looking at the whole island, which I wouldn't do if we're pricing a property, I would try to localize it. We should be able to figure out how long it's going to take to sell that property. To answer your question about price, if it's overpriced and they're motivated to sell and they want to sell, then the price should obviously be lowered if the marketing and the agent is in place. However, there are times in real estate markets, or any market for that matter, where it's supply and demand, just like the stock market, and at some point, demand diminishes to 0. So at that point, and this has happened in PEI where we had waterfront lots that were on for 2.25, and then we had an international financial crisis and they went down to 100 to 50 to 40 to 20. You could put them on for $7 and they wouldn't sell because there was no buyers at any price level. And this was demonstrated during the financial crisis in Cleveland and Detroit and all kinds of centers through the States and Canada where properties, not so much Canada, but in the States where properties basically went down to 0. There was 0 buyers. Detroit's a good example of that with, what was it, a third of their population leave or 2/3? I can't remember. They had too many houses. There is no buyers. Is that a long-winded way to answer your question or what?
Yeah. No, again,
it's not a simple question.
Oh, I realize that.
You did that on purpose.
No. It's just something that I've been coming across, and I have a challenge. Find it challenging to say to a client, again, it comes down to time. Are you able to carry this?
So why don't we just ask them this? Why isn't my property selling? Well, I'm looking at the stats here. Right now, there's 800 lots that are exactly like yours for sale. We sell 4 a month. So basically, if we take 800, divide it by 4, it gives us a very, very, very big number. And this is how many decades it's going to take to sell your property. Is lowering your price going to help? Probably. But if your marketing's not in place, no one's going to know it's for sale.
Yeah, but if your marketing is in place, then it's a matter of how much of a loss. And it doesn't even matter.
Look at the absorption rates and what's happening with the market. And we don't have a crystal ball. All we can go on is past data, which is never a prediction of the future. And if you learn anything from Warren Buffett, they'll tell you can't predict the market. But we can go and statistically say, if you have a $40,000 lot in that subdivision, in the past it's taken 10 years to sell one, and we're at 6 months, it's going to take longer.
Yeah, it's going to take longer. Just something if you're a seller listening to this,
They've already moved to another podcast.
I don't like telling them to negotiate with themselves and keep reducing the price, especially when it's below already what they purchased it for. It's going to take time, and hopefully you have that and are able to kind of wait it out as long as all the marketing material and everything is in place.
But then you get into TVM, which is a term I learned in commercial real estate, time value of money. So it basically says it is $20 more valuable today than it's going to be 10 years ago. So what you do is you facilitate the sale of that property, which may be at a loss, but then you're taking that money, you're putting into something else at today's dollar, and you're getting a much better return. So time value of money also plays into things. I've had building lots that have taken 14 years to sell, and then 2 doors later, after I sell my 2 lots, they put them on at double what I had mine on for, and they sell in a month.
Yes.
The island market is not predictable. It's an easy market to get in of, not necessarily an easy market to get out of. The liquidity can sometimes be challenging, especially with land, which I told you a story of someone that was listed with me. He's been on the market for 9 months in a subdivision that's had lots on the market for years and years and years. And he tells me this has to be sold by September. And this is July. What would you tell him?
And this is a piece of land?
A building lot.
It's a building lot. Well, depending on, he's going to have to price it. I mean, everything that you just said.
There's no demand. It doesn't matter what price he puts on it. There is a lot of lots for sale in this subdivision. None of them are selling. So whether he lowers the price, again, if there's no buyer at any price level, what's he going to do? Lose 99% of his initial investment? What I told him is I said, your expectation's unrealistic. I can't guarantee it's going to be sold in 60 days. I said, if you find an agent that can do that, let me know, and we'll cold list absolutely everything I have with them to get everything sold in 2 months. But to expect something that has an absorption rate of 3 years, that statistically, based on the math, is going to take 3 years to sell, and they think they have to have it sold in 60 days. I'm not a magician.
No, I agree with you. No, I'm not a magician.
You only agree because it's a good answer.
No, but I have said to clients in the past that if there was a miracle agent out there that would sell the property overnight, it's not that I want to carry inventory. I want to be able to list a property, work with my client, help them fulfill their goals, what their dreams going forward, and let them get on to their next chapter. I don't want to hold on to their inventory and hold them hostage and prevent them from getting on with their life. I want to see these properties sell. I just want to make sure it's in alignment with what their expectations and needs are going forward as well.
Are you familiar with the term hope price?
Hope price.
Because these subjects are actually tying into each other, and this wasn't predictable because we do not spend any time choreographing this at all.
We don't.
But are you familiar with the hope price?
I just got to watch a video that you sent me about a week ago, which was very interesting. So I'm just going to see how you tie this into real estate.
The hope price is, I have just bought a house in the States, and it was $800,000 Canadian. And my house in PEI is worth $650,000. Now, I really can't afford this house I've just bought in the States, so we're going to put our house in PEI on for $850,000. because this is what I need. I hope I can get this money to cover my purchase in the States. That's a hope price. So what happens with this type of client is you'll get all the marketing right. You'll go far beyond what anyone's doing to get the word out that this property is for sale. But we've all agreed right from the beginning, hypothetically, that the range in this house is around, say, $650, hypothetically. They've got it on for $850, and then I get the call. What do we need to do to move this house? Don't you love that? It's like, were you not at our initial meeting?
Oh, I know. I can completely relate to
There's
this.
nothing more annoying than that. You need to lower the price where the market is, because you are advertising a hope price, and hope prices rarely come together. This is no longer COVID times, although we do have a lot of sales happening that seem like COVID times where people are buying based on emotion and not actual mathematical facts. But to take a house that's worth $650, put it on it for $850 because your rationale is you have to have enough money to buy your next house makes no sense to me whatsoever. Just because I own Facebook stock and it's at $700 a share and I decide I want to buy a new BMW, so it has to be $2,000 a share, the buyers are not going to say, "Oh, Mike needs that BMW. Let's start offering $2,000 a share." It's supply and demand.
Yeah, I agree. And it's challenging, and for a buyer's hoping they can get that particular property. You may have a buyer that's interested in your home that should be priced at $650, but they're not going to. Again, I have clients that say to me, well, they should at least look at it, or why won't they just at least submit an offer? They're not even going to consider it. The price is too inflated, whether it is $25,000. I find as much as $25,000 to $50,000 above market value. Buyers aren't interested in looking. They're already aware that they're very educated, very savvy, very knowledgeable. I find buyers today very well informed. And as a seller, if you feel you're going to play the game and have some buyer finance your purchase going forward or pay off your car or your second home and wherever it is on the planet, they're not interested in doing that. They're hoping for the best price as much as you're hoping for an inflated price. It's not the agent. And I agree along with you. Go back to that initial meeting. If you've provided a proper presentation, a proper comparative market analysis, you've shared with them, the information and the data so that the seller can go through and look at it, and they still at the end decide, well, no, we're not going to list for that. Our friends and our cousins and, uncles and neighbors and everyone says this property is the best property and we're pricing it at this higher price point. It's your job to get them, the buyers, into this house. It's not going to happen.
Moving along to the more comedic section of the podcast, we're going to talk about a subject that sort of entered my mind as I look at the social media advertisements, print advertising and stuff. And people seem to be getting, and you even see this with different professions. So I was going to name some specific ones, but I won't because I don't want to offend them. But you're seeing real estate agents dressed down more and more and more, up to a point where we went to one real estate association meeting where someone showed up with track pants and a hoodie.
Yes, I do remember that
High
one.
school's over, put the track pants and the hoodie away. You're representing yourself to people in that business, which may or may not want to do business with you down the road. But more importantly, when you show up a client's place initially and you haven't shaved for 4 days and you got the shirt undone to the second button above your belly button and
Yes.
you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So what I did is I went to ChatGPT and I actually went on Google and I researched, does how your real estate agent dress and the cleanliness of their vehicle affect a new client decision as to whether or not they should deal with that client? What do you think?
I don't know.
Because you know how this came up?
How?
Someone was giving you a hard time because you had a clean vehicle and dressed well.
Yes, I do.
And when we're saying dressing well, I'm just saying your clothes are clean, they're not covered in motor oil, and you weren't wearing a hoodie, and your vehicle had been vacuumed and through the car wash. But they said to you something like it didn't matter how dirty your vehicle was and how you dressed.
People don't care about that stuff. just felt I was putting too much emphasis or care into those little things, the little details. But in my opinion, because I do have clients that are in my vehicle, I want them to know my attention to detail right down to the interior of my vehicle is very important. I had my first realtor on PEI. Their vehicle, when I got in, I had to push the drink cups and the, takeout bags, and they grabbed some from the front and tossed them in the back, and they used the excuse that they had children. So sorry, it was a bit of a mess. I could barely find enough room for my feet on the floor, and this was in the front seat. It didn't give me a very good feeling, and this is before any of my experience in real estate or had any expectations. I just know my initial reaction was, oh my gosh. And I was worried about getting stains on my pants and stuff because I wasn't sure if I sat on anything on the seat. So, and I'm not a princess. I just didn't feel very confident in them. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
What I have to say is anytime I have clients that are questionable, whether I'm not sure if I really want to deal with them or not as buyers, I always make sure that I have Subway onion subs stacked up to the ceiling of the car. They'll come in the car for a couple of minutes, but they're probably going to move on. But in all seriousness, here's what I came back with. And this is from a purchaser's perspective, or seller's for that matter. If I'm picking someone to sell my biggest asset, my house, I want the agent who looks and operates like a professional powerhouse. And I'm not making this up.
It said that?
It selected powerhouse.
Very cool.
So what they're saying, because when I look for dress shirts and stuff, I'm still into ties. I like suits, like to look good, because I know the next agents may not dress sharp. Maybe it looks like they haven't showered for a couple of days. Hopefully not. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Probably am. But suit and tie, super clean vehicle. This says attention to detail. Presentation matters. I take this seriously. It's a walking and driving billboard for, I'll show your house in its best light. If they're polished, their marketing probably is too. So you can bet the MLS write-up isn't full of typos and the photos aren't taken with a potato. I don't know how you take photos with a potato. But that's absolutely true. If their car is clean, they're meticulous, they speak well, their documentation, their presentations are good, how do you think they're going to present your house for sale? Or how do you think they're going to present the data to you when you're purchasing and you're wondering if this property is overpriced?
I think they're all very valid and good points. Again, I know my experience, so I would agree along with their attention to detail and your presentation of yourself kind of carries over into what your presentation of their property is going to end up looking like, and presentation of contracts and your attention to detail and putting together a good contract. No one's saying that you have to be, impeccable and have everything immaculate and crazy OCD level of dust particles, but you should have some pride. Show some pride in yourself, pride in your vehicle, pride in, is your vehicle. You were pointing out some vehicles didn't look like they've been cleaned in years. And if that's a realtor driving one of these, you gotta, I don't know. I just think we really need to
Can I share
pride.
something with you?
Sure.
When I have a clean car and I see people getting into it, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I really want to hand these people those little slippers that they wear in operating rooms. I don't get my car dirty with their muddy shoes. Moving along, what do we have here? Magazine advertising. Boy, it's a happening business here on the island. When I started, we had one magazine. It was the Real Estate Book. It was that cute little book from the States. I think they're printed in Georgia or somewhere in the South. Do you remember the Real Estate Book?
I remember the Real Estate Book.
Loved it. Fit in your pocket, carry it anywhere. It was just a classy publication, and I think it's still in many major centers now. So what happened at some point is the Real Estate Book was replaced by a private label magazine years later. Recently, we have another competitor to that, actually two other competitors. So now we have 3 real estate books. So the pool of real estate magazine advertising is only so big. There's only so many agents, even though we have a lot more agents now than we had before. There's only so many of them doing business that can afford to spend $1,000 on a page in a magazine. So I'm getting inundated on a weekly basis now with advertise in our magazine, and this is why it's worth the money, and you have to do this, you're missing out. Have you received the same?
Yes. Yeah, I
And what are
do.
your thoughts on that? How many magazine covers and inserts have you bought recently?
I haven't bought any this year. I have in the past. We usually would purchase the cover to celebrate our annual anniversary of the company opening is what we would do. I don't find, I didn't find it to be advantageous to myself to be advertising in there.
Let me explain what I feel about magazine or print advertising. And I think I've told you this years ago, because we used to do a lot of it. And typically when I buy advertising, I learned from the best. I buy the best placement and I buy it for a year or more at a time. So not only do I ensure that I've got that best placement, but I also usually get a pretty big discount because there's not many people that come along and buy 1, 2, or 3 years at a time in advance. But magazine advertising, where it works, and this is being directed at the sellers, is where it works is it is image advertising, like Coke or Pepsi or Nike. You know, you're in the middle of the Egyptian desert between Cairo and Alexandria, and you see a Coke sign. You're not going to pull your vehicle over, go up to the pop stand and drive a Coke. But in the future, maybe you're at the hotel that night or a week later, a month later, 6 months later, you're thinking, oh, I was in the hot desert and I saw a Coke sign. I'll have to buy a Coke over a Pepsi or something else. It's image advertising. That's all it is. If you advertise through print media over and over and over again, year and year after year after year after year, just like bus stops, bus benches, billboards, none of these are going to create a call to action in that they're going to pick up their phone and call you. But if they see it often enough, they will consider you down the road. So for the sellers, thinking that you're going to put your house in the magazine, maybe it on the front cover, back cover, inside split, you're not going to get the phone ringing off the hook. The people that are buying these magazines, even though the statistics probably isn't tracked because the magazine publishers don't want you to know this, are probably picking them up more for entertainment than being actually qualified buyers ready to pull the trigger.
I think yeah, absolutely. And it is as a listing agent, it can be a pacifier and
Like an open house. I'll put you in the magazine. I'll put your overpriced house in the magazine, and that will get it sold, not.
Yes, and because many sellers will say, what are you going to do to advertise and promote my property? I will tell you, the buildup, the hype, the excitement from the seller anticipating their property being in print, it gets them all excited, and then nothing happens. And a month later, unless you're going to advertise that same house month after month after month, but I mean, it's on realtor.ca, hundreds of different websites as well. Hopefully, other advertising, tools used. There's going to be a low. And as soon as they realize nothing happened from their big debut, they get frustrated. And I find that low, you've got a bigger challenge now at building them back up and getting that seller excited again. It's a roller coaster, I find, for a seller, which is why I don't typically, if I have something totally unique in that, sure, I might end up doing some sort of print, but it's not, I just don't like the roller coaster. I know I've been through it with too many sellers, and there's the high and then the low is so extreme, and then I got to build them back up and put them back at realistic expectations.
But when it gets into advertising, if you've got multiple magazines hounding you to advertise, what does that tell you about the effectiveness of their marketing? It's not working.
No.
If it was working, there'd be a waiting list. It's just like watching TV commercials. There's companies out there, I don't know if they still exist today because it's a different world, but there's companies out there, all they would do is watch TV commercials and they would keep track of how many times that commercial was played, when it was played, and for how long it was played over weeks, days, years, months. What did that tell them? It told them what was selling.
Yes.
So it's the same with magazine advertising. If they're driving you nuts to advertise in the magazine, they can't find people that are buying in because they're not selling property.
Yeah, and you can look at the thickness of the magazine. They're usually pretty thin, and it's not a lot. There's not always a lot in there.
So in closing, where this
Yes.
came from is I had a seller, the guy that wants his lot sold in 60 days, wanted magazine advertising for his lot. And I said to him, he was telling me, well, I always pick up those little magazines everywhere I go. So I said to him, well, how many different locations have you been in that you've picked up these magazines? And he said to me, I can't remember, it was like Texas, Florida, California, somewhere in Ontario. And I said, well, that's interesting. And how many houses have you bought as a result of picking up these magazines everywhere you travel? Do you know what the total was?
I'm imagining
A grand total of nothing.
0.
Which
Yeah.
demonstrated what I said to him. I said, if this was working that well, we'd be putting thousands and thousands of dollars into it. Now, I advocate it from an image advertising point of view to get your face there constantly. But as far as selling properties, put your money into social media.
Good advice.
That's it.
That is it.
Close it down.
I totally agree along with your statement. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, Prince Edward Island's podcast, helping to navigate our clients and listeners through the buying and selling process and a little bit of Prince Edward Island information as well. We appreciate each and every one of you for downloading and listening in on sometimes our nonsense and conversations and that we can sometimes go on to little rabbit trails down.
Be sure to leave us some feedback, a 5-star rating, follow the podcast. And if you have any ideas or any questions about Prince Edward Island real estate in general, because it's pretty well the same thing all over North America, or you have questions about Prince Edward Island or living in Prince Edward Island, shoot us a text, email, or a phone call, and have a great day.
Have a great day.